Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar, the Small Business Takeaways when Installing EV Infrastructure, co-hosted by Advanced Clean Tech News, or ACT News, and San Diego Gas and Electric. My name is Liana Rios. I'm an EV Customer Solutions Manager at SDG&E. Thank you so much for joining us today as we dive into the benefits of transitioning to electric vehicles and infrastructure incentives available for small businesses and nonprofit organizations endeavoring to transition to an electric fleet. As EV fleets gain popularity, more small businesses are adopting electric vehicles to meet zero-emission regulations and sustainability goals, but most are not aware of the financial benefits EVs can offer them. EVs have a significantly lower total cost of ownership, or we call it TCO, than diesel or gas-powered vehicles. Lower transit costs free up valuable resources for small businesses. SDG&E's Power Your Drive for Fleets program offers incentives for installing charging infrastructure, making the switch to EVs easy and cost-effective. The Power Your Drive for Fleets program helps small businesses get an early start on California's emission reduction targets, while incentives are still available. Emission regulations are requiring businesses to make the transition to EVs and SDG&E's program also offers resources aimed to help organizations through this transition. In addition, small businesses can enroll in SDG&E's electric vehicle high power rate that eliminates demand charges and offers a monthly subscription plan based on the amount of energy you need to charge your fleet. This offers more affordable charging, simpler pricing structures, and improved certainty and budgeting. So let's welcome today's speakers. So first, I will discuss the incentives and resources available through SDG&E's Power Your Drive for Fleets program, which is aimed at helping fleets save money, eliminate emissions, and simplify maintenance throughout the transition to a medium and heavy-duty electric fleet. Second, Molly Morelli, the Finance and Administrative Director of Outdoor Outreach, will discuss her organization's experience adopting EVs through SDG&E's program. Outdoor Outreach is a nonprofit that provides adventure-based youth development programs to children in disadvantaged communities. And lastly, Aria Berliner, Air Pollution Specialist at the California Air Resources Board, will discuss their upcoming funding program that is still in development called Innovative Small E-Fleets, which is geared towards helping small fleets and owner-operators make the transition to electric vehicles. Okay, just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Keep in mind that we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So I definitely encourage you to submit your questions by using the Q&A box in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Please direct your questions to the organizer. Next, some of the information that will be shared today is technical in nature, so I'd like to if you'd like to watch it again, the webinar recording will be sent out by the end of the week. Third, at the end of the webinar, before closing your browser, we kindly ask that you complete the quick 30-second survey. Your feedback is truly appreciated. And then lastly, for any technical issues and assistance during the webinar, please contact Benjamin Chan at GNA using the email address you see on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and dive into my presentation. So this is a presentation on the Power Your Drive for Fleets program that provides charging infrastructure to support medium and heavy-duty electric vehicles. Okay, so this program helps to install the make-ready charging infrastructure for medium and heavy-duty fleets, as I mentioned. It is a $100 million program that we intend to roll out over the next 5 to 6 years. The goal of the program is to bring in 3,000 new electric vehicles that include both on and off-road Class 2 through 8 vehicles into our region at over 300 customer sites. And these sites can be both commercial and private fleets. So skipping over to the right-hand side of the slide here, there's a couple of program requirements that I wanted to highlight. So there is a program requirement to demonstrate a commitment to procure at least 2 electric fleet vehicles. Next, in this discussion that we have with small businesses about transitioning your fleets, we really want to understand, okay, while you might have an immediate need for electrifying a couple of fleet vehicles, we also want to understand what your longer-term electrification growth plan is and your scheduled load increase over a 10-year period. And then next, not uncommon and very, very similar to the other investor-owned utility programs throughout the state, there is a requirement to provide data related to the charger usage for a minimum of 5 years. And then lastly, you must own or lease the property where the chargers are to be installed. And you must operate and maintain the vehicles and chargers for a minimum of 10 years. So if you are a leasee of a property, you are absolutely able to participate in the program. It just means that you'll likely need to engage the property owner in this discussion because there is an easement requirement where we will be installing the make-ready charging infrastructure. Okay, moving on to the next slide. So program eligibility includes a diverse mix of both on and off-road vehicles for medium and heavy duty. And you can see kind of some of the vehicle types that are included in this. So essentially anything over 6,000 pounds or gross vehicle weight, GVWR is what it's referred to. So you can see kind of the box truck under the medium duty left side of the screen there. And then down on the bottom, you can see different heavy duty types. Transit buses, school buses, goods movement, class 7 through 8 vehicles, yard trucks. Moving over to the right side, some of the other off-road types are, truck stop electrification, transport refrigeration units, yard trucks. We're working with the airport on electrifying some of their ground support equipment, and forklifts as well are eligible. Okay, we're going to jump into the infrastructure installation component of the program. So there are a couple of ownership options for this program. And I really like this slide. I think it demonstrates what this program covers in a really effective way. So this program is what we call a make-ready charging infrastructure program. So everything that you see in the teal arrow here is what SDG&E will pay for, construct, own, and maintain, all at no cost to the customer. So everything from the power lines all the way to the stub out at the charger is what this program will provide at no cost to the applicant. Now, everything that you see in green is what the customer is responsible for. So clearly the customer is responsible for acquiring the vehicle, and the customer is also responsible for acquiring the charger, or we refer to that as EVSE, electric vehicle supply equipment. The benefit of the applicant owning the charger is that you also are eligible for the LCFS credits, or low carbon fuel standard credits. And I'll talk about that in a subsequent slide. So the second option is what we call the customer-owned infrastructure option. So with this, SDG&E will still pay for, construct, own, and maintain everything in the teal area here up to the meter. And then everything that you see in green is what the customer, we call that the customer side infrastructure option, or the customer-owned option. The customer has the option to do the behind the meter or the customer side infrastructure improvements. And we can provide a rebate of up to 80% of the costs in order to do so. And so oftentimes, the question that we get is, well, why would you go with option 2 if you could just do option 1 and SDG&E will pay for everything? And there's a couple scenarios of why that I wanted to kind of bring forward. And so one that we've learned recently is if there's a customer that's trying to tie in solar kind of behind the meter, the option number 2, the customer-owned infrastructure option, is the only option to participate in this program. And then another scenario, a secondary scenario, would be if there are some customers that we're working with today that have hired that have contracts in place with third parties to actually design and build the behind the meter or the customer side infrastructure improvements. Customer choice is always a good thing, right? And then thirdly, we've also learned that if customers are interested in procuring chargers that have V2G capability, you must also leverage this option to ownership option. And this is where SDG&E will provide a rebate of up to 80% of the cost incurred to construct, own, and maintain this infrastructure. Okay. So this next slide is an electrification timeline. And the key takeaway for this slide really is that it takes a good 11 to 16 months to get through this program, from the time an applicant submits their interest to the interest form, all the way through to energization. And this is kind of what the pathway looks like. Again, it's 11 to 16 months, and that takes a while. But we also understand that acquiring these electric vehicles in the medium and heavy duty sector also have long lead times in many cases. So the key takeaway that I'd like to stress on this slide is to engage the utility early. We want to ensure that you have sufficient time to install the make-ready infrastructure before you take delivery of your EVs, right? So the earlier we can engage in discussions with you about your fleet electrification plans, the better. And again, just a reminder that this is a make-ready charging infrastructure program. So the customer or the applicant is responsible for installing the EV charger itself. Okay, we're going to jump into rates and incentives. All right, so I would be remiss if I didn't talk about electricity costs, using electricity as a fuel for your electric fleet. We do have a rate that we call the EVHP rate, or Electric Vehicle High Power Rate, that we are able to offer to our fleet customers beginning in 2022. We did get approval for this rate earlier this year, and the idea behind this rate is that it replaces demand charges with a new subscription pricing plan. I kind of liken this to kind of the cell phone plan, right? You subscribe to the cell phone plan based on the number of minutes you think you'll use in a given month, right? This works very similarly, but it also has a TOU, or time of use energy component, that goes along with this rate as well. So the idea behind this rate is to, again, help offset some of those demand charges and solidify some of the electricity prices for a fleet manager. So what I would like to say is that the rates that you see here on this slide are approximate, and they are subject to change. While this is the pricing that's in place today, we're not able to actually implement or offer this rate until first quarter of next year. So some of these rates may change between now and then. I just wanted to put that out there. The requirement to participate in this rate, however, is that EVs must charge on a dedicated meter. And so we definitely encourage fleet customers to separately meter their EV charging loads. It's not a mandatory requirement for the program. However, in order to take advantage of the EVHP rate, it is a requirement to have your EV chargers on a dedicated meter. And the goal of this rate really is expected to simplify and increase competitiveness of charging for many of the medium and heavy duty electric vehicle customers. And in some of the preliminary case studies that we've seen throughout the state of, electric fleets, there are some instances where the costs to fuel an electric fleet over diesel is almost half of what it would be under diesel. So that's not in every scenario, but we have seen some case studies reflect that. So for those early customers who are coming through the program, we call those our beta sites that we're actually going to be installing and constructing this year. We do have an interim rate waiver rate that works very similarly to the EVHP rate. So it, again, provides relief from some of the high demand charges, and there is a requirement that the EVs have to charge on a dedicated meter. This interim rate waiver will be available up until which time the EVHP rate is approved. And so the other idea, the TOU component of this rate, is that we would like to see fleets charging their vehicles during super off-peak to take advantage of these low prices between midnight and 6 a.m. Okay, now on to charger rebates. We also, through this program, offer charger rebates for school buses, transit buses, and sites that are located in disadvantaged communities. And you can see from the chart here that depending on the power level of the charger, you can kind of get an idea as to what your maximum rebate amount would be based on your EVSE power level. And the rebate for each qualified charger can cover up to 50% of the cost of the charger. What I would like to add is that we have an approved product list of vendors who have approved equipment available for this charger rebate. So again, the charger rebate is only available to school buses, transit buses, and sites that land in a disadvantaged community. And disadvantaged communities are typically those areas located throughout our region and throughout the state that are most burdened by poor air quality. So it makes complete sense that these programs are encouraged to install zero-emission charging infrastructure to help with that air pollution problem. Okay, now the fun stuff. Good news. HVIP, the Hybrid and Zero Emission Truck and Bus Voucher Incentive Project. Whew, that's a mouthful. HVIP for short. It's one of the most popular grant funding programs out there, and it is reopening on June 8th. This is super exciting. We're letting all of our customers know about this. It is available on a first-come, first-served basis. And from what we understand, this money is going to be gobbled up very quickly. So definitely encourage you, if you're interested in, applying, to get your application ready. The requirement here is that you have to work with an eligible dealer, and you have to work with equipment that is on the HVIP eligibility list. And the nice thing about this program is that it's easy. The dealer does most of the heavy lifting in terms of paperwork and requirements. They offer their rebate to the customer, kind of cash on the hood type of program. And there is no scrappage requirement to participate in HVIP. So June 8th, everybody, there's $145 million available, slightly more if you're located in a disadvantaged community. But I would like to direct your attention to our webpage. We do have an EV incentives fact sheet on our webpage that lists all of the eligible grant funding programs. Now, HVIP is not the only one out there, so you can find more on that EV incentives fact sheet. All right. Low Carbon Fuel Standard, or LCFS program. This is an opportunity where fleets can earn revenue by using electric vehicles. And for small businesses, any business really, this is absolutely critical. This LCFS program is a CARB-administered program, and it is in place to decrease the transportation sector's carbon intensity and to create economic value from low carbon and renewable fuel technologies. So how do the credits work? Essentially, clean energy producers and users earn revenue from this sale. Who can participate? So clean energy producers and users including electric fleets. So if you are a small business and you're considering transitioning to an electric fleet of medium and heavy-duty vehicles, you can be eligible for the LCFS credits or program. And this can be very, very significant. And this is something that can be factored into your total cost of ownership. When you factor in the amount of credits that you can get for transitioning to electric, you can essentially pay for your fuel. You can pay for the electric vehicle, charging infrastructure purchases and maintenance costs, including electricity purchases and administrative fees. So again, we do have an LCFS fact sheet on our webpage that I'd like to direct you to for more information. Okay, so just wanted to wrap this up really quickly. If you are a small business and you're interested in learning more about where to start with transitioning to an electric fleet, or gathering information to see if it's right for you, I definitely encourage you to visit our webpage at sdge.com/evfleets. Submit your interest form, let us know who you are, and I can put you in contact with one of our customer solutions advisors, and they can help guide you through the process. All right, so without further ado, I am now excited to turn the controls over to Molly Morelli of Outdoor Outreach. Take it away, Molly.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Liana. Hi, everyone. My name is Molly Morelli. I am the Senior Director of Finance and Admin at Outdoor Outreach, and I'm excited to be here this morning just to share a little bit about our journey going electric. Okay, so to start, just to tell you a little bit about who we are and why it makes sense for us to go electric. Our mission at Outdoor Outreach is to connect youth to the transformative power of the outdoors. Outdoor Outreach is a Southeast San Diego-based nonprofit, and we run programs primarily with youth ages 11 to 25 who may not otherwise have opportunities to connect to their parks, beaches, and open space areas that San Diego is so well known for. And through those outdoor experiences provide youth with the opportunities to build resistance in the face of challenges, confidence in their power to make a difference, and also connects them to supportive peers and mentors. And then just to quickly show you the diversity of our activities, our goal is really to introduce youth to all different types of outdoors activities so they can challenge themselves in many different ways. And then I'd really like to show this slide. I cannot take credit for this slide at all, but it's awesome. And it really shows all the different activities we do, but also where we do them. We are not an organization that has a building that we run programs out of like so many others. Our programs are out in the outdoors, and so they take place all over San Diego. As far as even beyond San Diego, we go as far as Joshua Tree to do overnight camping trips. We go up to Big Bear to do snowboarding outings. And so a huge part of what we do is getting youth to these locations, which is a huge barrier for them to access these spaces. And so part of our model is really to provide the transportation for youth to all of these different areas. So how do we teach youth about sustainability? It's so critical to who we are and what we do, because we want to protect the spaces in which we recreate and use. And so we integrate lessons on environmental issues, climate change, and ways that youth can better steward the environment in many and all of our outdoor programs. And then we have a unique program called Outdoor Voices that actually gives youth the opportunity to bring their own voice to environmental issues and advocate on behalf of matters that matter most to them and then affect their communities. And so what brought us to electrification? It just made sense. It's really about practicing what we preach and advocating for the environment and protecting it. We're taking steps to purchase, or we took steps to purchase these vehicles that will allow us to run our programs in ways that are more sustainable and protects the environment in which in which we serve these kids. Our new electric vans will help us run over 500 outdoor programs for over 2,000 youth each year, and reduces one of the key barriers to youth accessing the outdoors, which is transportation. So initial concerns just going into the project, a couple main ones. One was just distance per charge. As you saw from that map, we go all the way to Joshua Tree and Big Bear. And so does that make sense to have those vehicles when probably the distance per charge won't get us that far? But honestly, just thinking about it more, as you probably saw, the majority of our programs are really close to home and are just day outings. And so we still have other vehicles, so utilizing those, the electric vehicles for the closer to home or local outings is kind of how we decided to approach that, that initial problem that we saw. And then just the second concern was just complexity around the project. We worked with a lot of different partners, vendors, a lot of different interests that were involved in the project. And so just the staff time and resources to put into was just something to consider initially going into the project. And the one big key component that we absolutely needed approval for before we entered into this project was approval from our landlord. As Liana mentioned, we are able to do this program even though we don't own, the space in which our offices are, in which our vehicles are parked. But we were able to get our landlord to actually approve the utilization of the parking lot to install the infrastructure for the vehicles. And so with that approval, we were able to really consider moving into this project. And just a little bit about our project funding. We might be unique in this situation, but we have had, it's really critical, SDG&E has been critical in getting us these vehicles and supporting this project. And we've had an ongoing relationship with them for a number of years. We get an annual grant from them called our Environmental Champions Grant. We also typically have an SDG&E employee on our board. And so we've been just connected with them for a long time now. And our contact over there was initially the person who reached out to us about our interest in the project. And they've really taken charge of the project planning. They covered the cost of the charging station infrastructure installation, as Liana was mentioning, that whole kind of SDG&E side. And then they connected us to, which was probably the biggest thing, was connecting us to our funder, Citizens Energy, who funded the bulk of the project, including the purchase of the vehicles. Our vehicles that we purchased, which I'll tell a little bit later, weren't electric to begin with. We had to, basically transition them to electric vehicles. So they paid for that cost. And then they also paid for the charging stations themselves, as well as the electrician who had to set it up. So they really covered a huge portion of the project, and that funding comes from their commitment for 50% of their profits from the Sycamore Penasquitos high voltage transmission line project to support low-income SDG&E customers gain better access to electric vehicle transportation. So that was a huge connection that SDG&E provided to us, and really was critical in implementing this project. And then really it's us moving forward. So we'll cover ongoing costs of vehicle and charging station maintenance, as well as ongoing costs of electricity. Okay, and then I broke this down into kind of 3 phases as I saw it in 3 phases. The first one being selection and setup. And that really took place over the course of about 6 months last year. And that was really the biggest load on us to the organization. It's just like, we've never had electric vehicles before. We really didn't know how they worked, which ones were the best, how, all the selection, just the research to find what worked for us. And then getting just working with our landlord about location of the charging stations, and just all that kind of like organization of the logistics around the project. Just took a little while. And so what we decided on, so our vehicles, currently our fleet just want to share a little bit about what our current fleet looks like. We have 4 15-passenger Chevy Express vans, 1 8-passenger Chevy Express vehicle, and then 1 Chevy Colorado truck. And so we chose 2 10-passenger Ford Transits. NorCal Vans was the vendor that supplied those. And the reason being, 10-passenger vehicles are difficult to find, and we like 10-passenger vehicles because they don't require a commercial driver's license for a driver. And what we were trying to do is diversify our fleet so we can have more people who are able to drive and not just CDL drivers. So the Ford Transit was really one of the few 10-passenger vehicles. So that's why we chose that one. And of course, as many passengers as we could without having to have a commercial driver's license. And so, like I said before, they were not electric vehicles to start with, and so we had to reconfigure them. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then charging stations, we went with ChargePoint. Really, why? Is because they had the best reviews, best customer service, really seemed like the best option among some of the other options that we were looking at. And then the other component of kind of that setup was, where on our property would we be able to, have these charging stations installed that would be the best for the landlord, the best for the other tenants. We had to get our landlord approve the easement for SDG&E to come in and do the work of the infrastructure. So that took a little while just to create those plans and solidify them. So all in all of that kind of took about 6 months. And then phase 2 was construction, which was really on SDG&E and Lightning Systems and NorCal Vans. So that also took about 6 months, just finalized in March. First, the vehicles went to our vendor NorCal Vans to be reconfigured, which is another, I feel like unique element for us is that we reconfigured, you can see in the picture, the benches to fold up, and that's for us really critical for gear transportation. We can utilize it for both passengers and gear. So they had to change the seats. Once that was done, which took about a month, they were shipped off to Colorado to Lightning Systems, where then they underwent the transition to electric vehicles, which also took about a month. Lightning Systems was amazing to work with, really great at the training component, knowing that we were newbies to this whole thing, came on site, taught our staff, have been great in communicating and just teaching us about how these machines or these vehicles work. And then the charging station on the other side, right, those are the vehicles. On the other side, we had the charging station infrastructure that SDG&E was working with. We wanted to align that with the vehicle readiness and when they'd be coming on site. So that started about mid-December and finished about late February once once we really considered all inspections to be completed. So a few months, and really SDG&E took, charge on that and just kind of kept us in the loop on what was happening. And then the EVs arrived on site on March 9th. So this is them. You can see they were in Colorado, the mountains in the background, getting loaded up to get shipped to us. And then the last phase was just once they're on site, learning about them, utilizing them, all the things that go into just, having electric vehicles. So it's now May, so we've had them about 2 months now. Honestly, it took a while to get familiar with their operation. There was just some things that were coming up. We had some charging issues and warning lights that really pushed back our utilization with the youth, just making sure that they weren't, that they were safe to drive. And really, we came to find out that was just kind of because they were not electric vehicles to start with and they had to be reconfigured, just working through some of those kinks. And we also had some delayed DMV registration. So we're just really now utilizing them in the field with youth, which is great because we're just starting our busy summer season. So it really is a good timeline. And then plan to utilize them. I think I mentioned this, but we kind of decided to use them for more local trips, which is the majority of our outings, especially as we get used to their length of charge and distance per charge. You know, we're just kind of being strategic in how we're learning about them. And then the time of use rate. This is the interim rate waiver rates that Liana was mentioning. You know, that we're currently set up for. We're currently in the winter season, but as the summer comes on board, one of the things that we're going to implement is setting up I think it's called a charging schedule to only charge during off-peak and super off-peak hours to really utilize those lower rates and not get charged for the on-peak hours. So basically, it just wouldn't charge during the on-peak hours, and then it would start charging on the off-peak and super off-peak to really save on those costs. And then lastly, just our future plans with EVs. I think we're really excited about the vehicles. The participants are just like so excited to be in an electric vehicle. Most of them have never been in one before, so it's a really great learning opportunity. I think in terms of getting more electric vehicles, it's just around really, I think, our landlord and our space on our site and the ability to do that. So as we're able, and if we're able, I think it would absolutely be, you know, in the plans to get more electric vehicles. So I think that's pretty much it for me. I'm going to pass it over to Aria.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aria Berliner, and I am the staff lead developing the Innovative Small E-Fleets project. Innovative Small E-Fleets will be a project dedicated to supporting small fleets and owner-operators with their transition as zero-emission vehicles. Traditionally, small fleets and owner-operators do not have the financial resources available to adopt emerging technologies, and more often than not, will buy used diesel trucks that are high-emitting. With that in mind, we are going to work with small fleets and owner-operators to design a program that works for them. We have spoken with several agencies and groups already about different strategies to target small fleets and owner-operators. There are some programs that are available to them and some that are being considered. What we have right now, at least on the CARB side, is that we have HVIP, which is an option for small fleets and owner-operators for an incentive, but many feel that the trucks are still too expensive and they worry about range, charging, and refueling. We've also heard about the all-in lease models, which may work for some small fleets, but availability is limited, and some small fleets may not realize any of the cost benefits because of the high upfront costs. With that in mind, we are trying to work with small fleets and owner-operators to design a program that works for them. CalSTART will host 3 focus groups. There was one focus group last night, and the remaining 2 are on May 26th, which is a Wednesday, and June 4th, which is a Friday. CalSTART has scheduled the focus groups at different times to try and accommodate varying schedules. So the second focus group that's on May 6th will be during lunch, so from 12 to 2, and the third will be in the early morning, which is from 7 to 9. I wanted to also share the CalSTART invite or announcement flyer for this for these focus groups, because the information that CalSTART gets from these focus groups will really help in designing this program. So I have it up here, but please feel free to contact me or CalSTART if you or anyone you know that's a small fleet or owner-operator would like to participate in one of the remaining focus groups. With that, I will pass it back to Leanna. Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much, Molly and Aria. Amazing information. What a fantastic program, Outdoor Outreach, and really excited to hear more about the Small E-Fleets program as it's in development and as it works its way through to a real program. I think this is an area of great need for small businesses. So happy to see that those programs are in place. So what I'd like to do is transition to the moderated question and answer portion of the webinar. So thank you to all of our attendees today for submitting some great questions along the way. So I'm going to go to my Q&A sheet here and let's dive in, shall we? Okay, let's start with the first one, and this is directed to Molly. Molly, how has having EVs and the extra step of charging them impacted your staff? Was it easy to teach your staff best practices regarding EV maintenance and charging?
Yeah, training, very, very easy. Like it's not difficult. It's just things a process that you have to make sure. I think the biggest thing was just making sure that they're actually charging once you hook them in. And so there's just, a few easy steps for them to learn to make sure that that's taking place. Yeah, and I think impacted staff, I think honestly it'll be so much better because they don't have to go get gas, which I think, it's hard to kind of incorporate sometimes in programs, or it's just an extra step, right? So I think honestly in the long run, it'll be much easier for staff in terms of just like what they need to do or what they need to remember about the vehicles.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I know driving home and parking my car and plugging in is far easier than going to the gas station. So I concur with what you shared, Molly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next question here is directed to me. As EV charging stations become ubiquitous, other than convenience, what incentive does a small business have to install Evse? Now, I'm assuming that this question is coming from a light duty kind of personally owned vehicle Evse perspective, but I'll kind of address both. So what incentive does a small business have? So I'm going to first respond to the fleet perspective, right? When a small business is converting your medium or heavy duty fleet to battery electric, you do have a lower total cost of ownership over gas or diesel fueled vehicles. In addition, the governor's executive order that was passed recently mandates that all new cars sold in California will be zero emission by 2035, and for the MDHD sector by 2040. And so a lot of these programs, these rebates, grant funding, incentives for make-ready charging infrastructure are available to help transition fleet managers to an electric fleet earlier than regulations will mandate. And what I will share is that once it becomes mandated and it's a regulation, I can assure you that all the incentives and grant funding and rebates will go away. So I would say if you are in a position to consider transitioning to electric, think about it now. It is the future. It's coming, especially in the state of California. And take advantage of these rebates, incentives, and grant funding monies that are out there to help you transition now. And then for, if you're asking the question from a light duty, personally owned vehicle, charging station perspective, I would say the same thing. There are programs and incentives out there to help install charging infrastructure for workplaces, at multi-unit dwellings, and there's also grant funding programs out there to support the Evse for those applications as well. SDG&E just got approval on a program. We're hoping to have a final decision here on our light duty charging station program coming up here in the next month or two. So more to come on that. All right, next question. Molly, I'm going to direct this one to you. So what was your site design process like? How easy was it to create space for the charging infrastructure?
Sure. So it's definitely including our landlord and our property manager in every step of the process. They really have control over the property, and so they chose where the best spot would be for them. It's actually in the back corner of the business park, and really just not intrusive at all. Of course, we only have 2 vehicles, but yeah, just keeping them informed along the way. And we have a fairly big parking lot, so being able to find just a little bit of space for them wasn't that difficult. There was, I will add, we did have to move a dumpster, so there was some dumpster relocation that was involved that actually SDG&E took care of as they were installing the infrastructure. So just working with our landlord to make sure that it works for them and that we're kind of being fair to them and working with them to make them want to allow us to have these charging stations on site was important.
Thank you very much, Molly. Appreciate that. All right, next question is directed to me. So would charging stations that include a hydrogen fuel cell power production be of interest or acceptable for funding? And so unfortunately, the answer is no. So Power Your Drive for Fleets program is approved to support the adoption of medium and heavy duty battery electric vehicles only. However, I do believe there may be some programs. I've seen some grant funding opportunities out there for hydrogen fuel cell possibilities. So definitely look into some of the CEC grant funding opportunities that are out there for hydrogen fuel cell applications. All right, next question for Molly. So what changes did you make to your existing fleet rotation after investing in 2 EVs? What benefits, financial or other, do you see in the EVs compared to your previous vehicles?
Sure. So we absolutely did make some changes pretty much immediately. We had two just older vehicles, one 15-passenger vehicle, and then an old Kia minivan that we were using, which we wanted to retire for years. And so we immediately retired those 2 vehicles. And so now, as I kind of mentioned in my presentation, we have 4 15-passenger, 1 8-passenger, all gas, 1 truck gas, and then the 2 EVs. So we did make some slight transitions with the onboarding of the 2 EV vehicles. And then what benefits? Yeah, I mean, our new vehicles are amazing. So I definitely think one, just like our relationship with Lightning Systems and their help learning the vehicles, addressing any issues. I mean, they're full service, really. And so just like the level of care that they take in teaching and the passion they have just for like kind of electric vehicles is different, obviously, from our other vehicles. And then financial, I mentioned this, but we are so new to this, and so we're still kind of
It's only
assessing.
been a couple months, right?
It's only been a couple months, so we're still assessing the financial benefits, but definitely we'll be looking into some of those rebate programs, and then the utilization of kind of that super off-peak timing, how that affects our bills. So there's just things we still need to just kind of look into and just troubleshoot a little bit more as we're going on. But I definitely think that there will be.
Great, thank you so much. might be a good opportunity to come back after you have some more experience under your belt and
Yeah,
talk
I feel
about
like
after the first year, right?
yes, after a year, I will have all of these answers for sure.
I would like to let everyone know on the line that Outdoor Outreach was our very first Power Your Drive for Fleet site that was built. And this just completed construction a couple of months ago, as Molly mentioned. So this is our first, right out of the gates, fresh. Hot off the presses for everyone on the line. Okay, so next question is, I guess, directed to me. And Aria, if you have anything to add, please share. So do these same funding and resources apply to community school districts and regional transit authorities for vehicle electrification? Actually, this one is more directed to me. Sorry, Aria. So yes, the Power Your Drive for Fleets program is available for a range of medium and heavy duty electric vehicles, which include community school districts, regional transit authorities. We are working with a lot of schools, and as a matter of fact, many of our early data sites who are coming through the program are school districts that have adopted battery electric vehicles. And we're also working with a couple of the transit agencies in our region as well, who are adopting battery electric transit buses. So yes, indeed, it does. Molly, next one. So what effect, if any, did the EV's range have on your trips or other business operations?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned this in my presentation, but we've just allocated those vehicles for our more local day trips, and using our other vehicles for the longer overnight trips. So it hasn't really affected our business operations. We're just being a little bit more strategic in how we're utilizing them. And, you know, we're still learning their range. So I'm sure as we like kind of get more comfortable with using them, we'll use them on longer and longer outings. Yeah. Very
good. Molly, do you know what the range is on your lightning bands offhand, approximately?
Oh, that'd be really good information to have. I want to say 130. Does that sound right?
Oh, I think that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something around there, I think.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know. So definitely suitable for the majority of your day trips in the local region.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Great. I'm just curious, this is totally off script, but what has the response been of some of the kids riding in the electric vans? Do they even realize it or know it or acknowledge it, or just curious?
I think they definitely talk about it because they're new vehicles for us, right? So they're like just blown away that they're new vehicles, and even our staff too are just like, I actually was part of the training, even though I don't necessarily drive them on a day-to-day basis, and just like how they work was just so cool to learn, and our staff was so excited. You know, all of our staff are really on board with, you know, this whole project and being more sustainable. So it's really been a big team morale. And I know as, you know, as participants, I know that we'll talk to them about that in our programs. And these are electric vehicles, and I'm sure this will be their first time, a lot of their first time riding an electric vehicle. So like just looking under the hood is really like, wow, and cool to see. And so I definitely think we'll be incorporating that more and more as we go on, and just like teaching our participants about the vehicles and how they work. So yeah.
Great teaching, learnable moment. I love it. All right. Next question. Does SDG&E provide training on how to operate and maintain charging infrastructure to program participant staff? So what I will say is that, you know, the Power Your Drive for Fleets program provides the make-ready charging infrastructure, and it's really up to the customer to procure the EV charger itself. And so does SDG&E provide training on how to operate the charging station? No, we do not. However, you would typically work with your EVSP or your electric vehicle service provider your charging station vendor, essentially, to provide this for you. And Molly, I don't know if you have anything additional to add, if, ChargePoint kind of provided you with that kind of educational know-how on how to use the charging infrastructure or how that worked.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was going to mention, we with ChargePoint, we did a kind of an onboarding call to introduce the platform and the online platform. And we've just been working with them kind of pretty closely because we have run into just a few issues, but that they've resolved really quickly. So they've been a really big support in just learning about the charging stations and how they work, in addition to Lightning systems.
Excellent. Thank you for that ad. All right. And let's see here. This one is for you, Molly. So what has the response been from the community about your electric vehicles? Are program participants more interested in sustainability because of this initiative?
Yeah, I think like I mentioned before, we're still introducing the vehicles. And so I think we're still kind of waiting to get more response because we haven't introduced it to too many yet. But that's the goal, right? Like I said, teaching them about electric vehicles will be part of what we do. So, yeah.
Excellent. And are the vans branded? Are they marked that they're 100% electric?
They are.
Oh, that's great.
They have a big banner at the top, all the way around, actually. It says zero emissions electric.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. So let's see. I think we are just about out of time. Let's ask one more question and then we'll wrap up. So this one is directed to me. So I think there was a similar question, but what is the business case for small businesses to deploy EVs? And so again, I'm not sure if the context of this question is coming from a light duty kind of personally owned EV or from a medium or heavy duty EV perspective, but I'll address kind of both. So from the medium and heavy duty EV fleet perspective, I would say the business case is there. You have a lower total cost of ownership. So typically you'll have lower maintenance and operating costs. You can take advantage of the LCFS or low carbon fuel standard credits. There are the grants and incentives to help offset the premium cost associated with the battery electric vehicles. But you also, as Molly had mentioned, outdoor outreach has a strong sustainability, message in their core business and what they do. And so it just made complete sense to convert a couple of their fleet vehicles to battery electric to walk the talk, if you will, right? And so, take advantage of these available grants and rebates and incentives now before it becomes regulation and you're mandated to do it. So just a thought. I think that's a really good business case for small businesses to deploy EVs. But hope that answers the question. We are essentially out of time, and I would like to wrap up this webinar here. I apologize if we didn't get to your question that you submitted today. Please be on the lookout for the follow-up email with a recorded link later this week. And as a reminder, please, please, please fill out the quick 30-second survey that will pop up as you leave the webinar so that we can continue delivering excellent webinar offerings. Thank you so much for participating. Molly and Arya, thank you again. And Team G&A, thanks for another great program. Have a wonderful day, everyone.